Hey folks, it's Nate. Thanks for joining me once again at the art table. And today we are taking a look at some actual art of mine. It's been a while since we've done that. However, for the month of August, I'm running a little thing over on Twitter and some of the other social medias, which are linked down in the description below, which I'm calling 30 pages. I'm trying to produce a page of sequential art storytelling every day for the month of August. And I'm going to level with you right away. I've actually kind of cheated. I drew probably a third of these pages before the month of August started, but I'm trying to keep that production going. I do some of these art exercises on social media on a fairly regular basis, partly just to keep myself in practice. You know, it's important to be honing those skills every day, and also just so there's something to put out there and point to if people are like, well, what are you doing right now? Can I see some of your most recent work? Because it's not good to just produce something like, say, a year ago and then rest on your laurels. Not only is that bad for your skills as an artist, it makes people kind of suspicious that they're not seeing what you can do right now. So I really want to keep a steady stream of stuff going up, and I find that easier to do if I have a kind of monthly theme to go off of. People who have been following me on Twitter or Facebook for a while are aware that I ran a face drawing month in, I want to say that was March? No, May. I did that in May, and then in the month of June, I did a Kung Fu series where I sketched out a fight scene, and then I worked on it over the course of 5 days, and by the end of the month, I had 6 fight scenes that kind of give you an idea of how I compose action and what I think a good dynamic composition is, things like that. 30 pages is a bit of a different undertaking. I wanted to give an idea of what kinds of stories I will tell as I tell stories through visual media, because they are a little bit different than what I would do if I was writing a short story or a novella. So even if you're someone who follows me on my blog, you've seen short stories, you've seen novellas, you've even seen full-length novels from me, but these are going to be much different from the kind of stuff I produce for comics, just because I think there's a lot of stuff you can get into comics that plays much better than trying to tell it in prose. A lot of things to do with action and clever composition and character moments, more so than broad types of story. You're not going to see anything new archetypically. You're not going to see anything new in terms of genre or character work, but I'm going to be a little more experimental in action. I'm going to be a little more experimental in the kinds of information I reveal and keep hidden while working in comics than while writing prose. And I think that's one of the great advantages of comics as a media, as opposed to something like a movie or a novel or even a TV show. Your ability to manipulate timing, to withhold information or present information is much greater in a comic because your window into the world is much smaller. And so you kind of have to, it's almost like stop motion. You have to create a bunch of little snippets, and you can snip out certain things to make a moment more interesting, or to keep hidden some things that you can then reveal to the audience at a later point. All of that is very strong, and you can do it without being quite as blatant as a movie or a TV show has to be in the way it positions a camera, in the way it moves the camera, in the way it cuts and shows you what you do and don't see, because what you do and don't see is an automatic part of every comic. That's something that really excites me about the media. It's something that I really like about the media. There are masters of this craft like Naoki Urasawa, who everyone who's interested in writing comics should read. And I take a lot of inspiration from people like that. I'm trying to not only hone my craft, which is very important, but present some things that I think are really important to the audience. And I'm not saying I'm a master of it. In fact, I think I'm very much a journeyman. And I'm not working off a completed script here. I really just have an outline for the story I want to do. So it's not going to be as perfect as it could be. This is more an exploration of visual storytelling and how I want to go about it, what I think of developing a visual language, that kind of thing, that I really want to dig into this month. And that is exciting to me. Hopefully it's exciting to you as well. So what exact kind of story am I looking to tell right now? Well, I am messing around with superhero as a genre, but maybe not strict superhero. I am kind of interested in the superheroes as a broad part of life approach that we've seen several times in recent popular media. The best example of this, the most widely known example of this, is of course Horikoshi's My Hero Academia, where super abilities are quite common and there's a special segment of law enforcement that is dedicated to dealing with those kinds of crimes. And while I have a model like that in my story, it is much more heavily influenced by the Wearing the Cape novels written by Marion G. Harmon, which have been around for about 4 or 5 years longer than Hero Aka. Now, I'm not saying that Horikoshi's work is some kind of a ripoff or that Harmon did it better. They're telling two different kinds of stories, and my story is more that Harmon explores rather than that Horikoshi explores. More of the ideas of how do you organize and deal with these superhuman threats than finding your place in a society that is superhuman. And the story I'm working on right now is kind of a prelude to a longer story that I've had kind of steeping in the back of my mind for probably 6 or 7 years now. Since about the time I ran into Harmon's work, to be perfectly honest. I call that story Blue Collar Heroes, and it's more interested in what a work-a-day superhero would be. Someone with super abilities, but who is closer to a beat cop than some idealized figure in the sky. These people still have to work hard, they have to uphold morals, they have to fulfill social responsibilities, but they don't necessarily always get glorified for it in the way many superhero comics have been obsessed with for the last 20 years or so, and maybe that's not surprising. Celebrity culture has become all-pervasive in America, and frankly, I find it really boring and kind of death for culture. That kind of celebrity stuff just ties you up in the same repeating loops of interpersonal disaster and exploitation and all these other things that are done to death. I'm not interested with it. And one of the reasons I chose to kind of demote the social standing of superheroes and blue-collar heroes was to avoid any kind of messing around with those concepts. Because again, I just don't find them interesting. So instead we are presenting these kind of almost uniformed super cops who are nevertheless private individuals as well. And I'm more interested in the question of what does it mean to be heroic than what does it mean to have superpowers in fame put together. Because that's just a much more interesting and, in my opinion, much more timeless question to examine. So that's kind of what I wanted to do with Blue Collar Heroes, and here I'm just exploring a couple of the background characters who I'm not going to have as much time to explore in Blue Collar Heroes itself. So, yes, this is a fun story. It's kind of a prelude. It's kind of a prologue, but it is not exactly. I'm just looking at some characters who I wrote while I was working on that story and that I really like, but who don't really have a chance to shine as much as I would like them to. And I think this story is good. It tells us how they met. It tells us some of the character dynamics between them, and they are important to the stories in Blue Collar Heroes, but they're not the main focus. I wanted to give them their own moments to shine, and that's what you're going to get in 30 pages. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what exactly I am trying to do with some of the pages in here later in the month. In the meantime, if you're interested in that, I am going to put together a super thread, which I will link down below, that you can click through and see everything on Twitter as it stands, and I will continue to update that thread as more pages are added. Anyways, I hope you found that interesting. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. There's a like button and a subscribe button you can use as you see fit, and I'll talk to you later.